The Ohio River, a vital waterway for the Kentucky movement from the 1770s up till today. As I stand here today, it is 33 feet deep, well below flood stage. Let's take you back to January of 1937 and talk about a couple of weeks that was pretty devastating to the town of Maysville, when the Ohio River slowly crawled out of its banks and had utter destruction for this town. Page 1 headlines. River past flood stage, rising at a rapid rate, crest of 56 or 57 feet expected on Wednesday. This area of town was already underwater by this time, and the folks that want to get around town had to go across the C&O tracks just above me to keep their feet dry. This low-lying area, Wall Street and West 2nd, was hit early in the flood. Since it's a low-lying area, all the homes that used to be down there at the time were already underwater. This is all that remains of the L&N tracks that went across a wooden trestle over to the current Chamber of Commerce building, which was then the train station. The wooden trestle that was here before this viaduct was built was one of the two ways to get across from the east to the west part of town. That soon will change as the waters continue to rise. Page 1 headlines, 19 January 1937. River still on way up. Crest put at 58 feet. Forecast of rain darkens picture. Several homes entered by water here. We had massive amounts of rain at that time. And as you see, we're rolling down 2nd Street in the 400 block. The low-lying houses in this area has already started getting water in the basements as it continues to rise. Residents living in this area are pretty much devastated because it is January. It is bitter cold outside, and now the furnaces and boiler systems doesn't work. They are forced to move to the 2nd floor or find shelter with relatives or friends on higher ground. Notice that nice big flood wall down here behind these houses in the 800 block. We'll talk about that shortly. Page 1 headlines, 20 January 1937. Rise continues as water passes 58-foot stage. Predictions place crest between 58 and 59 feet. Water cuts off east end of the city. The U.S. mail was very important back in those days. So in 1937, since the east and the west was divided by floodwaters, the post office set up a little branch in Ryan's drugstore right over there. 21 January 1937. 4 big words with letters seldom used in newspapers of the day. Disastrous flood faces city. Water passes 61-foot stage and still rising. By this time, the water treatment plant was underwater and water was shut off throughout the city. Because the floodwaters continue to rise down the lower end of town, the 4th Avenue School, now occupied by Bethel Baptist Church, was set up as a field hospital during the month of the flood in January. 22 January 1937. The front page headline states, flood situation is acute. The water continues to rise. Most stores along 2nd Street and the houses you see here has water almost up to the 2nd floor. 24 January, commonly referred to as Black Sunday, when the heavens opened up in a 24-hour period from 7 a.m. to 7 o'clock the next morning. 1.25 inches of rain fell, pushing the total precipitation for the month of January to a record 14.47 inches. and the water continues to rise. 26 January 1937. The headlines read, "May get 1 to 2 feet." The city was placed under martial law, with Lieutenant J.A. Kehoe in charge. January 1937. The monster headlines in the newspaper reads, "Practically on stand here. To remain stationary 24 hours. Stage at 2 p.m. 75.425 feet. About 6.5 feet higher than the 1913 crest." All I can say is, wow. Located on downtown Maysville, Kentucky on Court Street is one of 5 high water mark plates that are in the Maysville area that I know of. This one has a date stamped on January 27th, 1937, indicating the high water mark, which the Ohio River normally runs at 33 feet, 50 feet flood stage, wound up going up to 74.425 feet. You can tell from looking down through there that all those businesses on 2nd Street were up to the 2nd floor. The destruction is absolutely amazing. To give a real perspective of how high the waters really were during this flood, check out one of the other Corps of Engineer flood plates, located right on that high end of the wall. That's a lot of water. 28 January 1937. The front page headlines reads, "Floodwaters receding." Then in the story, the drop was all of 6 inches in 14 hours, which is surely good news. Preliminary figures in Maysville show 4,500 people rooted from their homes and flood damage estimated $2.5 million. Of course, that's 1937 dollars. February 1937. The headlines read, "Cleanup in full swing. Water has fallen 15 feet from the crest. Will drop the flood stage by Thursday or Friday." On 3 February, the banner headlines were gone from page 1 as traffic between 2 ends of the city resumed. Water fell below the Lexington Street extension and was expected to be off the new Limestone Creek Bridge Thursday. February. The mighty Ohio plunged 8 feet in 24 hours and fell below 50-foot flood stage mark for the first time since January 18th. . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . 5 February, the bottom seemed to drop out of the river as it fell a stunning 12 feet to 38.2 feet. 6 February informs the readers that water will be available from the city mains Saturday. Finally, the river was reported to be at 31.2 feet and falling at a rate of 0.3 of a foot per hour. Maysville's nightmare, the likes which has never been seen and hopes to never see again, was finally and at long last over. The streets and yards and homes were full of mud. Maysville has been plagued with flooding from the Ohio River for 150 years. Time to take action. 12 years later, in 1949, the flood wall project was started in Maysville. It is 14,000 feet long, has 7,700 feet of concrete wall, and 6,300 feet of earthen levee, which ranges from 11 feet up to 30 feet high, depending on the terrain. This wall came in very handy. In 1997, several of the openings were closed, including this one at Rosemary Clooney Street and this one at the Limestone Landing. The city engineers and the workers installed probably 10 feet or so of the metal brackets to keep the river out of the town, which would have probably been 6 to 9 feet deep if it were not closed. Concrete steps heading up to check out the grace and beauty of the Ohio River once in its normal pool. You just have to thank the city leaders back in the day to have the insight to actually go through and push for the funding to get this big, massive floodwall project built in our small little town. It helped protect the town from the numerous floods that we've had, even a few since the 1937. We had one in 1948. I remember barely as a kid the one in 1964, and the most recent one was the flood of 1997. This is what the Ohio River looks like when we like to see it. Nice and calm. Enjoying this peaceful January afternoon, sitting along this nice concrete flood wall that separates downtown Maysville from the Ohio River. This flood wall is designed to handle the 74-foot water levels of 1937, plus an extra 3 feet. So far, it has not been challenged with those type of water levels. Let's hope it stays that way for future generations. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you on the next adventure.